Today, I want to take you deep inside one of the most infamous correctional facilities in the United States, Rikers Island. Located between Queens and the Bronx in New York City, Rikers Island is not just a jail complex. It has become a powerful symbol of everything that can go wrong inside a prison system. Rikers Island primarily holds pretrial detainees, meaning many of the people inside have not been convicted of a crime. Yet, for decades, it has been known for extreme violence, inhumane living conditions, and systemic neglect. For many, simply surviving a stay at Rikers becomes the real challenge. Violence is one of the most defining features of Rikers Island. Inmate-on-inmate assaults, gang activity, and excessive use of force by staff have been widely reported. Guards are often overwhelmed, undertrained, or understaffed, creating an environment where chaos can thrive. Instead of rehabilitation, fear becomes the dominant emotion. The living conditions inside Rikers are equally disturbing. Reports describe filthy cells, broken plumbing, lack of heat or ventilation, and infestations of rats and insects. Medical care is frequently delayed or denied, leading to preventable injuries and even deaths. Mental health services are especially inadequate, despite a large number of inmates suffering from mental illness. One of the most troubling aspects of Rikers Island is its impact on vulnerable populations, particularly young people and those with mental health conditions. Solitary confinement has been used as punishment, even for teenagers, causing long-term psychological harm. Rather than offering treatment or support, the system often responds with punishment. Corruption and mismanagement have also played a major role in Rikers' decline. Investigations have revealed falsified reports, ignored abuse complaints, and a culture of silence that protects wrongdoing. Accountability has been rare, allowing harmful practices to continue for years. The consequences extend far beyond the prison walls. People released from Rikers often carry deep trauma that affects their ability to reintegrate into society. Families are torn apart, communities suffer, and the cycle of incarceration continues. In recent years, calls to shut down Rikers Island have grown louder. Activists, former inmates, and public officials argue that the facility is beyond reform. While plans have been proposed to close it and replace it with smaller, community-based jails, progress has been slow. Rikers Island forces us to confront a difficult question. What is the true purpose of incarceration? Is it punishment, or is it justice and rehabilitation? When a prison becomes more dangerous than the crimes many inmates are accused of, something is deeply wrong. In conclusion, Rikers Island stands as a stark reminder of the urgent need for prison reform in America. Understanding its harsh reality is the first step toward ensuring that no correctional facility ever reaches this level of failure again. Rikers Island has earned a reputation as one of the most notorious and dangerous jail complexes in the United States due to decades of documented violence, neglect, and systemic failure. Unlike many correctional facilities that house long-term convicted prisoners, Rikers primarily detains individuals awaiting trial, yet the level of danger inside often surpasses that of maximum security prisons. News reports, government investigations, and testimonies from former inmates and staff have consistently described Rikers as a place where safety is never guaranteed and survival often depends on luck rather than protection. The sheer scale of Rikers Island contributes to its notoriety. The complex consists of multiple jails operating on a single island, holding thousands of detainees at any given time. Overcrowding has been a persistent issue, leading to heightened tensions, increased aggression, and limited supervision. In such an environment, conflicts escalate quickly, and minor disputes can turn into violent confrontations. The lack of effective control has allowed gangs and informal power structures to dominate daily life within the facility. Rikers Island is also widely known for its high rates of physical abuse, both between inmates and involving correctional officers. Numerous investigations have revealed patterns of excessive force, retaliatory violence, and failure to intervene during assaults. Rather than serving as a place of temporary detention, Rikers has become synonymous with fear, trauma, and constant threat. This reputation has spread far beyond New York City, making Rikers Island a national symbol of how dangerous and dysfunctional a jail system can become when oversight, accountability, and humane standards are ignored. One of the most alarming realities of Rikers Island is that a large portion of the people held there are pretrial detainees who have not been convicted of any crime. These individuals are legally presumed innocent, yet they are confined in an environment that is often violent, chaotic, and degrading. Many are detained simply because they cannot afford bail or are waiting for court proceedings that may be delayed for months or even years. As a result, people are effectively punished before being found guilty, exposing them to harsh conditions without having received a fair trial. The pretrial detention system at Rikers disproportionately affects low-income individuals and marginalized communities. People from poorer backgrounds are more likely to remain incarcerated because they lack the financial resources to post bail, even for minor offenses. This creates a system where freedom is often determined by wealth rather than justice. While awaiting their court dates, detainees may lose jobs, housing, and family stability, suffering long-term consequences even if their charges are later dropped or dismissed. Being held as a pretrial detainee at Rikers also means limited access to legal support and preparation. Overcrowding and understaffing make it difficult for detainees to meet regularly with their attorneys, weakening their ability to defend themselves effectively. The psychological toll of prolonged uncertainty, combined with constant exposure to violence and neglect, places immense pressure on detainees. In many cases, this pressure pushes individuals to accept plea deals simply to escape the brutal conditions, regardless of their actual guilt or innocence. Violence is one of the most defining and persistent features of life inside Rikers Island, shaping the daily experiences of both inmates and staff. Physical assaults between inmates occur at alarmingly high rates, often fueled by overcrowding, gang rivalries, and constant stress. With limited supervision and insufficient staffing, conflicts are frequently allowed to escalate unchecked. Simple disagreements over space, food, or perceived disrespect can quickly turn into serious acts of violence, leaving many detainees injured or traumatized. Equally concerning is the role that some correctional officers have played in contributing to this culture of violence. Numerous investigations and lawsuits have documented incidents of excessive force, verbal abuse, and retaliatory punishment by staff members. In some cases, officers have been accused of ignoring inmate-on-inmate attacks, or even encouraging violence as a form of control. Reports have also revealed instances where use of force incidents were underreported or falsified, making it difficult to hold those responsible accountable. This widespread violence creates an atmosphere of fear and instability throughout the facility. Inmates often feel the need to align themselves with gangs or adopt aggressive behavior simply to protect themselves. At the same time, officers working in such an environment may become desensitized, burned out, or more likely to resort to force rather than de-escalation. The constant threat of harm undermines any sense of safety or order, turning Rikers Island into a place where violence becomes normalized and deeply embedded in everyday life. The living conditions inside Rikers Island have long been described as inhumane and unsafe, reflecting years of neglect and crumbling infrastructure. Many housing units suffer from broken plumbing, flooding toilets, and sinks that do not provide clean water. Inmates are often forced to live in filthy cells with accumulated trash, mold on walls, and foul odors that never dissipate. Rodents and insects are common, further contributing to unhealthy and degrading surroundings that violate basic standards of human dignity. Medical care at Rikers Island is another major concern. Detainees frequently report long delays in receiving treatment, even for serious injuries or chronic illnesses. Requests for medical attention can go unanswered for days or weeks due to understaffing and poor coordination. In some cases, preventable medical emergencies have resulted in severe injury or death because timely care was not provided. Mental health treatment is especially inadequate despite a large number of inmates suffering from depression, anxiety, and other serious conditions. Infrastructure failures worsen these already harsh conditions. Aging buildings lack proper heating in winter and adequate ventilation during extreme heat, placing inmates at risk of illness. Power outages, malfunctioning security systems, and broken doors have also been reported, increasing both danger and disorder within the facility. These failures not only affect inmate well-being, but also hinder staff from maintaining control, allowing unsafe conditions to persist and intensify daily hardships. Mental health care at Rikers Island has been widely criticized for failing to meet the overwhelming needs of the population it serves. A significant number of detainees arrive with pre-existing mental health conditions such as depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Instead of receiving consistent evaluation and treatment, many are placed into an environment that intensifies their symptoms. The constant noise, overcrowding, and threat of violence create extreme psychological stress, making Rikers particularly harmful for individuals struggling with mental illness. Access to mental health professionals is limited and often delayed. There are not enough psychiatrists, psychologists, or trained counselors to provide regular care, resulting in rushed assessments or long periods without follow-up. Medications are frequently mismanaged, delayed, or discontinued, causing emotional instability and withdrawal symptoms. In some cases, detainees in crisis are left unattended for extended periods, increasing the risk of self-harm or suicide. Rather than offering therapeutic support, the system often responds to mental health crises with punishment. Individuals exhibiting symptoms, such as emotional outbursts or disorientation, may be placed in isolation or restrained instead of receiving treatment. This approach not only fails to address the root of the problem, but also deepens trauma and mistrust. The lack of compassionate, structured mental health care turns Rikers Island into a place where psychological suffering is ignored, misunderstood, and allowed to worsen over time. Vulnerable populations inside Rikers Island face some of the most severe and lasting harm due to the facility's harsh environment. Young inmates, some as young as teenagers, are often housed in conditions that expose them to violence, intimidation, and psychological trauma. Despite their age and developmental needs, they are frequently treated the same as adult detainees without adequate protection or support. Exposure to constant fear at such a formative stage can permanently affect their mental health, behavior, and future prospects. Individuals with mental illnesses are also among the most at-risk populations at Rikers. Many struggle to understand rules, follow orders, or advocate for themselves, making them easy targets for abuse by both other inmates and staff. Instead of receiving specialized care, they are often punished for behaviors related to their conditions. This leads to repeated disciplinary actions, isolation, and worsening symptoms, creating a cycle of suffering that the system fails to interrupt. Other vulnerable groups, including LGBTQ+ inmates and individuals with physical disabilities, face additional dangers. Reports have highlighted instances of harassment, sexual abuse, and neglect, often with little to no intervention. Protective measures are inconsistent or ineffective, leaving these individuals exposed in an already dangerous environment. The failure to safeguard vulnerable inmates reflects deeper systemic problems, where survival often depends on strength or status rather than basic human rights. The use of solitary confinement at Rikers Island has been one of the most controversial and damaging practices within the facility. Inmates placed in isolation are often confined to small cells for up to 23 hours a day, with minimal human interaction and limited access to natural light. This extreme form of isolation is frequently used as punishment rather than a last resort, sometimes for minor rule violations. For many detainees, especially those already struggling with mental health issues, solitary confinement becomes a deeply traumatic experience. Extended isolation has been shown to cause severe psychological effects, including anxiety, depression, hallucinations, paranoia, and emotional breakdowns. At Rikers, individuals in solitary confinement often experience a rapid decline in mental stability. Instead of calming behavior or restoring order, isolation can intensify anger, confusion, and desperation. Some detainees resort to self-harm or suicidal behavior as a response to the unbearable conditions. The impact of solitary confinement does not end when inmates are released back into the general population or into society. Many carry long-lasting emotional scars that affect their ability to trust others, control emotions, or function in social settings. For young inmates and those with mental illness, the damage could be especially profound and irreversible. The continued use of solitary confinement at Rikers highlights a system that prioritizes control and punishment over human well-being and rehabilitation. Corruption and mismanagement have played a central role in the ongoing crisis at Rikers Island, allowing abusive practices to become deeply embedded in the system. Leadership failures, poor oversight, and inconsistent enforcement of rules have created an environment where misconduct can occur without meaningful consequences. Over the years, investigations have uncovered patterns of falsified reports, missing documentation, and ignored complaints, all of which have helped conceal abuse rather than prevent it. A culture of silence has further enabled this corruption to persist. Correctional officers who witness wrongdoing may feel pressured not to speak out, fearing retaliation or isolation from colleagues. Whistleblowers have reported being punished or sidelined, while those responsible for abuse often face little accountability. This lack of transparency undermines trust and sends a message that harmful behavior will be tolerated or even protected. Mismanagement has also affected staffing, training, and resource allocation. Officers are often inadequately trained to handle conflict, mental health crises, or de-escalation, increasing reliance on force. Poor administrative decisions have led to chronic understaffing, creating dangerous conditions where supervision is minimal and chaos thrives. Together, corruption and mismanagement form a system where abuse is not an exception but a recurring outcome of institutional failure. The impact of time spent at Rikers Island does not end when inmates are released. Instead, the trauma often follows them back into society. Many former detainees leave the facility with deep psychological scars caused by constant exposure to violence, fear, and humiliation. Symptoms such as anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, and emotional numbness are common, making it difficult for individuals to adjust to everyday life. These struggles can interfere with basic functioning, including maintaining relationships, holding a job, or trusting others. Families of former inmates also suffer the consequences of this trauma. Loved ones may struggle to reconnect with individuals who return emotionally withdrawn, angry, or unstable. Children, in particular, can be affected by the absence of a parent during detention and the behavioral changes that follow release. The strain placed on families often leads to broken relationships, financial hardship, and long-term emotional distress. Communities bear the broader social cost as well. When individuals return from Rikers without proper support or rehabilitation, they are more likely to face unemployment, homelessness, and further involvement with the criminal justice system. The trauma experienced inside the facility can fuel cycles of violence, substance abuse, and reincarceration, weakening community stability and public safety. Instead of preparing individuals for successful reintegration, the experience at Rikers often deepens the challenges they face outside its walls. Rikers Island has become more than just a physical facility. It stands as a powerful symbol of the failures and urgent need for reform in the American criminal justice system. Decades of reports, investigations, and high-profile incidents have exposed a system plagued by violence, neglect, corruption, and inhumane conditions. It represents how a correctional institution, instead of promoting rehabilitation, can perpetuate cycles of trauma, inequality, and injustice. For many, Rikers embodies the flaws inherent in a system where punishment is prioritized over care, safety, and human dignity. The facility highlights systemic issues such as mass incarceration, over-reliance on pretrial detention, and the disproportionate impact on marginalized communities. It demonstrates how policies that criminalize poverty, mental illness, and minor offenses create a pipeline that funnels vulnerable populations into environments ill-equipped to meet their needs. The injustices witnessed at Rikers have sparked public outrage and mobilized advocacy groups, journalists, policymakers, and activists to demand changes that extend beyond one jail to the broader justice system. Moreover, Rikers illustrates the consequences of neglecting accountability and oversight in corrections. The repeated failure to implement meaningful reforms, despite decades of investigations and lawsuits, underscores the difficulty of enacting systemic change within institutions resistant to scrutiny. In this way, Rikers serves as both a cautionary tale and a rallying point, emphasizing the critical importance of humane treatment, transparency, and rehabilitation-focused policies in criminal justice reform efforts across the United States. In examining Rikers Island, we are forced to confront not just the failures of a single jail, but the larger flaws in America's criminal justice system. Its violence, neglect, and systemic abuse are a stark reminder of what can happen when punishment overshadows humanity. But understanding this reality also gives us hope. By shining a light on these injustices, advocating for accountability, and pushing for reforms that prioritize rehabilitation and dignity, we can begin to create a system that truly serves justice rather than perpetuating suffering. The story of Rikers Island is a call to action, a reminder that change is not only necessary, it is possible.